Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate, 25 years after the crackdown on the unprecedented student protests in Tiananmen Square and Beijing, protests that stunned the world. We're talking about it here in the France 24 debate. Before we say hello again to our panel, let's say hello to Nicholas Rushworth. It's our Media Watch segment. How are you, Nicholas?
Hi, Francois. Well, of course, here in the studio, we're buzzing away about this event. What is it? A piece of history, 25 years. No buzz in China, of course. If we look at this cartoon there, you can see the president all smiles, Xi Jinping. It's like a little bit of a paint job afternoon for him. He's not actually recording those tanks or Tank Man. He's actually, what is he? He's doing a bouquet of flowers.
There's a white flower there. At the,
So, of course, that is the message that the Chinese authorities want to convey. In terms of the world media, it's massive, of course. It's all over the press. The main thing that stands out is actually before and after. So there we have that iconic image of Tank Man. Now, his name is supposed to be Wang Weilin. Then, at the time, he was 19 years of age. Of course, he disappeared. His whereabouts are unknown. Some people are even hoping that he may even still be alive 25 years on. Compared to that, the exact same spot, Tiananmen Square, what do you have 25 years on? China has moved on. It's got a traffic jam.
China's got a traffic jam. A media crackdown underway. Some saying it's worse than previous years, as we were saying in part one of our discussion.
Yeah, it's pretty complete. We've got, look at this, we have the Great Wall of China, don't we? But we also have the Great Firewall as well. Look at this website here, there, the greatfire.org website. And it's reporting that Google has been blocked and slowed down for about 4 days now. And the issue there for greatfire.org is, well, is this going to be permanent? Is this a test? Because we don't know if anything is going to change when the anniversary is actually over. Now, of course, the Beijing authorities are pretty much in shape there. You can see in the HuffPost this anniversary, the Chinese government have got wise to those social media memes. We've all seen those yellow ducks replacing the tanks. We've seen numbers that have been used in various codes, all kinds of ways. Even the...
You got to keep up, though.
Well, yeah, the candle emoticon has been removed from Weibo. Here we can go to free Weibo. There you can see censorship on tweets going out on Weibo.
Weibo, the big social networking site in China.
Absolutely. Now, I was struck when I was doing my travels here that, in fact, Microsoft's Bing, its browser, is actually joining in. It's taken off this picture for its Chinese users. What do you see there? You see a dog, nothing harmful about that, but it's on a tank. So we're kind of extreme here. In terms of the traditional media, what do we have? No comment, of course, except this I spotted in the Global Times, which is in English, saying, hey, anti-China forces are at work. Look at Ukraine, look at Thailand, look at the Soviet Union. This is not the way we want to go. China is stronger today.
All right, Nicholas Rushworth, many thanks for that. Let's say hello once again at this point to our panel. And it really does pick up what you were saying, Nicholas, to the points that one of our guests, Alice Ekman, was making just before the break. Alice, French academic with the French foreign relations think tank IFRI. I want to say hello once again as well to Philippe Dufresne, economist. Also with us here in the studios is Frédéric PUPATTI of the University of Lille 2. Joining us from Washington, Yaxue Cao, founder of ChinaChange.org, who was living in China when it all happened 25 years ago. And joining us from the University of Nottingham, political scientist Steve Tsang. You heard there just before the break, Yaxue Cao, the way Alice Ekman was describing it and the way Nicholas was describing those beautiful euphemisms by which the censorship laws are bypassed. And I guess it raises the question, can you keep a lid on it?
As long as there are people, these things will always happen. History can't be avoided. All we can do is live in the present, and right now we're very happy, very content. I was young back then. Who was right and who was wrong? History will make that judgment.
No, I don't know. Well, how do you put it? Sorry, I can't take this interview.
All right, there you see two different points of view. Yaxue Cao, your reaction to what those people on the street in Beijing are saying?
Well, what I can't see their face, but what I sense is a fear, and they know it's something they shouldn't be talking, not something they don't want to talk. Those are two things. Now, the government depends on the actually totalitarian, the survival of it depends on disinformation and block the information.
But you heard, hang on a second, you heard the point made by that first person saying, you know, we're a nation of 1.4 billion people. If you rock the boat, and there have been times in the past where China has known great periods of chaos, it can be pretty dangerous.
That's the theory the party is trying to install in people, and a lot of people buy into it. The fact is China needs what the Chinese government is feared most is public discussion of China's future. People's participate. If people's participation is there, Chinese people are allowed to discuss their public affairs, the future of the country, and they can come up with the better plans, and they can learn from learn the truth and think for themselves. But the government wants none of that. And the reason this 25th anniversary or Tiananmen Square movement in general is kept such a tight lid on it, because it is the defining moment in China's recent memory. It defines two things. It defines what the people want, and it defines at the same time what the communist regime does not want people to have. So it's a dramatic moment, a defining moment. It's not all that nonsense about rocking the boat or China has such a big population, we can't afford that. How about start from an honest public discussion? And that's the very thing that scares the party.
Frédéric PUPATTI, in your research, when you speak to people, they let their guard down, you talk to them. Is Tiananmen something that comes up in conversation?
Tiananmen comes up in a certain way, but not the one we're going to expect on a relative way. Tiananmen still remains a taboo among the Chinese population, and just not talking about the population living inside China, but also outside of China. Even though they would feel more free to speak out and express themselves. It is something highly sensitive in China for the younger generation, especially, which is clearly blacked out from the beginning. This is a very sad thing to look about.
All right, and it brings us to another aspect of that history. The prime minister at the time, Steve Tsang, Deng Xiaoping. He's now remembered by many as the man who opened up China after Mao. He's gone down in history to a lot of people here in the West as a good guy.
Well, Deng Xiaoping was a very complicated figure in historical terms. He certainly was the man who was responsible for starting the changes after Mao Zedong's death and ushered a new period of reform. Whatever else he did, you cannot take that away from him. He was also the man, not prime minister at the time, but if you like, the strong man, not holding a senior official position, but clearly the man who had the final say, who decided what the outcome should be at the time of the Tiananmen protest. At the time, the General Secretary of the Communist Party, the man who was supposed to be officially the leader of China, was relatively open-minded. He was somebody who was prepared to have a dialogue with the students, with the demonstrators, and contemplate significant changes. He was himself put under house arrest by order of Deng Xiaoping. So if Deng Xiaoping did time, then which way China would have gone would have been an open question. I don't think how it ended was predetermined.
And how did China evolve afterwards, after the initial crackdown?
Now, what happened in Tiananmen Square was indefensible, unjustifiable, and not tolerable in any way. But having said that, we also have to contextualize what happened since. Most of what the demonstrators and the student leaders at the time wanted in Beijing have now become reality in China. It's not democratic, it's not respecting human rights, but on the other hand, the scope for individual freedom, for individual space in China now is dramatically higher than what it was imaginable 25 years ago. But if you happen to be a dissident or somebody that the party consider you as a potential challenger to the party's monopoly of power, they will apply very strong repressive measures against you. But they are now using smart repression rather than summary repression as they did 25 years ago. So China today is very different from China 25 years ago.
Philippe Dufresnay?
I totally agree with Mr. Zhang. Economically speaking, the protests in 1989 were triggered by the death of Hu Yaobang, who was an official who was asking for more to fight against inflation, for more career prospects for the young, and who was already denunciating the corruption. Now, this triggered the protest. Now, 25 years later, what is Xi Jinping fighting against? Inflation, unemployment for white collars, and corruption. So that's exactly what Mr. Zhang says. China has reached these levels, at least in terms of economic development, the levels that they were talking about in 1989.
Yaxue Cao, reading through some of the testimony of those who lived through those days of 25 years ago, they're a little bit bitter sometimes. They say today's young people, they're too materialistic, they're not idealistic enough, they don't pay attention to politics, all they care about is making money.
I don't harbor that kind of a bitterness on a personal level against this younger generation on a personal level. They are the product of the party-state system, the education system, and the social system. So the information control in China is still very, very vigorous, and the Chinese government knows it's a contradiction. On the one hand, it obviously needs the internet, the most important at this point, the most important freedom in China is internet freedom. And the government knows, obviously needs it for the economy, for life on a daily basis. But it's also the thing it fears most. And between the two different drives, different forces, people in between find the opportunities, but still the control is such that no real public discussion, no real public participation is possible, let alone organization.
All right, writing in the Financial Times, historian Timothy Garton Ash finds China's the Tiananmen Square crackdown deeply unoriginal. Deng Xiaoping just did what communist leaders always used to do when faced with men and women rising up: shoot them. By contrast, what China's done since 1989 has been extremely original, combining the dynamism of a market economy with continued one-party rule, Leninist capitalism. I'll put it to you as the junior member of this panel, Frédéric PUPATTI, Timothy Garton Ash going on to say that that's why China, for a student of comparative politics, is the most interesting place on earth.
True.
Is that what drew you to China?
At first glance, I would be seduced by this argument for sure, but I'm deeply concerned about the global view people should adopt instead. People should think outside the box, and they have to take also into consideration several other factors. With the most glamorous image of China right now is its economical assets, but in a general opinion, it needs to go beyond this.
It needs to go beyond this in the sense of what? What is the specific? What should we be looking at for our view of China now?
I think people need to adopt maybe a harsher view about China, and they need to be more critical.
When you say people, do you mean states? Like, I mean, like governments,
like maybe governmental actors, maybe, and civil society as well. They need to get a harsher stance concerning China. They need to revise up some of that point of view, and they need to make it quick, because it's what happened 25 years ago is truly intolerable and inexcusable, and it's definitely doesn't have to rehappen again. And China gave us the very bad example in mind, and Western governments and Western civil society should go ahead of this and take further harsher sanctions.
Harsher sanctions against China.
Harsher sanctions against China for what? For what happened?
Well, for instance, France is accused at times of being soft when it comes to Tibet, whereas the Germans toe a much tougher line.
Yes, indeed. Well, Tibet is another issue. We have to see this maybe, well, that's my opinion, from the intercultural point of view. The way we think here is not the way they think over there. And their point of view is that what happens in China stays in China, and we don't have anything to tell them. Now, I understand your stance, and I really respect it. But if we start telling China, if we judge them based on what happened 25 years ago, then we're never going to reach any type of communication at all.
Well, the U.S. State Department statements today asking for the release of political prisoners are not about what happened 25 years ago. We're not hearing those statements from many Western capitals, though.
Indeed, but I believe the United States also just released some archives showing additional testimonies about what happened in 1989 at Tiananmen. I mean, the timing was perfect. It's just... Maybe this is this fight in the shadow against the U.S. and China. France being in the middle, I can't really say exactly what is each one's motivation.
Alice Ekman, this brings us back to a point you hinted at in part one of our discussion, which is here in the West, we assume that if you move towards a liberal Western-style economy, that you eventually get a liberal Western-style democracy with multi-party rule and political parties in the parliament and all the trimmings. You're not so sure.
Well, that's at least not the assumption that is the most widespread in China. China is, for example, looking at Singapore, looking at the concept of good governance, being based on the assumption that if you provide a wide social safety net, if you're able to provide growth, if you're able to provide a series of benefits to your population, support will remain, and the most important is the legitimacy, popular legitimacy. And the fact is that today the party is facing a legitimacy crisis, and Xi Jinping is trying to fight back or to counter back this crisis by launching this now famous anti-corruption campaign. We don't know what will be the exact result because it has been launched one year ago. But I would like to go back to what was said before, saying well, the Chinese are thinking this or thinking that, or the assumption is that actually it's very complicated within China itself. You have a debate. Steve was saying earlier that in Tiananmen there was also a debate within the party. There was party infighting between hardliner and softliner, and this debate is still ongoing within the party today. You have different senior party figures who have a different stance on which path the party should follow. There is a general, I would say, consensus about the importance of maintaining a one-party system so far, And also, but there was also some diverging views within the party and also within population, as was mentioned before. So you have a lot of debates going on within China. Well, sometimes debate is not public. That's a fact. So you have within think tank debate, within social policy think tank, within a party school you have a debate about. You have also scenarios about what would happen if major crisis happen, or what can be the major threat to one party system, etc. So all these debates are taking place within party section, etc. So it's very I mean, as to go back to maybe the penultimate question, studying China is fascinating for this reason, is that it's complex situation and the debate is not public, but following the debate from inside is even more fascinating.
And when you look at the balance sheet, you say to yourself that this Leninist capitalism, well, for the most part, it works.
Well, it depends for whom. Now the party, Xi Jinping, has to face the huge challenge of reducing revenue imbalance at a national scale. You still have a strong revenue gap between the western provinces, central western provinces, who are mainly poor. Also, things are progressively changing, and you have also the more developed southern eastern coast that's known for since Deng Xiaoping first reform. So you have to reduce this imbalance. There is also the issue of social safety net. I mean, medical care coverage is still incomplete, and population is expecting for more now, and expectations are very high, higher than before. So you have a lot of challenges facing the current leadership, and maybe the accumulation of these challenges that will maybe progressively lead to a new form of governance. But it's a question mark. I would be very happy to have this debate in 10 years' time at the end of Xi Jinping's mandate. But the fact is that the two-track policy that has been launched is Deng Xiaoping, or two-aim policy, which is political stability and economic liberalization. This is still at stake. It's still on table at the top of the agenda. And according to the parties, there is no contradiction between these two aims. And this, of course, it's not the most widespread assumption in the West here.
Yaxue, right now, it's been well chronicled how much the U.S. and the Chinese economies are interconnected more and more all the time. My question to you, going forward, should the administration in Washington be engaging more with Beijing or be isolating more Beijing?
First of all, I want to just make a quick comment about whether the Leninist capitalist economy is a success. I think it's way too early to conclude that it's a success. The crackings are appearing, and we'll see in the few years down the road. Now, between U.S. and China, yes, it's very much profoundly entwined, economically and even culturally, certainly in everyday life. But from my point of view, this is as an activist who want to help to promote change in China. The question I'm always asking myself is that how U.S. can still, U.S. needs to consider some very large questions. One of the large questions, very large, loaded question is that China represents 1/5 of the human race, and China is a dictatorship. Let's not avoid that word. Let's not avoid it. It is a one-party dictatorship, bend over to maintain it that way, and that has large consequences for the whole world, not just for China. So, we know Chinese investment, IPO, its business is corrupting the international trade and investment environment. I'm not an expert on this, but many people who are expert can test this. And morally, in the West, I talk to Americans a lot, mostly Americans whose work career involved in China in some ways, who speak Chinese in a lot of cases. They become so fearful. They're fearful of their visas being denied. They're fearful of getting onto a blacklist. And I said, if you in a free country are becoming so fearful, have you thought about it? What does this mean?
All right. So
this is something you should think about it.
All right, and that's where we're unfortunately going to leave it because we're out of time. I want to thank you, Yaxue Cao, for joining us from Washington, Steve Tsang from the University of Nottingham, Philippe Dufresne for being with us, as well as Alice EKMAN and Frédéric PUPATTI. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.
Beyond Business.
Knockoff products worth hundreds of billions of dollars change hands every year. Everything from fake sunglasses to counterfeit building material. In Beyond Business, we look at the link